Recognizes the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Kinzinger, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to tell you a story. There's a little boy named Omran Daqneesh, age 10, and his little brother is Omran. That's the boy you see in the photo here that was shared across the internet worldwide 2 weeks ago. Ali was a really good big brother. He loved to play outside. And he was still at that age when kids really get to dream big and imagine their future. And I can only imagine the life that Ali looked forward to. Maybe he wanted to be a police officer. Maybe he wanted to be a teacher or a doctor. I really can't say for certain because tragically, his life was cut short by an airstrike. Ali's death is an all too common fate for many of Syria's men, women, and children. These are the people that have lost their chance of life from the brutality of Bashar al-Assad and Vladimir Putin. Of the over 500,000 dead Syrians, more than 50,000 are Syrian children who've been killed since the evil dictator Bashar al-Assad turned against his own people in 2011. Yet even as the world continues to be outraged over these atrocities and pictures of dazed and bloody Syrian children like Ali's brother Omran, Assad and Russia and their Iranian backers are still barrel bombing and launching chemical weapons against civilian targets. On a daily basis, we hear that Syrian and Russian fighter planes launch attacks on medical facilities and hospitals across the country. When these facilities are bombed, it's the children who suffer. In fact, the regime's belief is don't target necessarily military assets, because when you target innocent civilians, you inflict more collective pain on the population of Syria. And in Assad's estimation, that brings the war closer to an end. At the end of July, a maternity hospital in Idlib was bombed. A recent story in the New Yorker highlighted the horror that comes with these bombings. In Aleppo, newborns and incubators suffocated to death because a Syrian or Russian airstrike cut off power to a hospital. Who's doing this and why? Bashar al-Assad continued the legacy of brutality against his people from his father. His father who had one goal, and that is to keep power. Power is a crazy motivator for some people. The people of Syria in 2011 decided they wanted some freedom, like is humanity's right. And they stood up and protested peacefully against Assad. What did Assad do? Did he respond by saying, well, let's talk and maybe find a way to have an outlet for your interests or your concerns? No. Assad rolled the tanks. Assad said he would kill his opposition. And what ensued after that was the incubation of a group we know today as ISIS, the opening of a civil war in Syria that is now spreading all over the Middle East, a massive refugee crisis around the world. I hear some people in political conversations today express admiration for Vladimir Putin. They express admiration for Vladimir Putin's strength, as if oppressing and killing people is something to be proud of. That doesn't show strength, that shows weakness. Mr. Speaker, Vladimir Putin and Russia are tearing Europe apart. Vladimir Putin and Russia are delivering bombs on medical facilities and on children in Syria. They're no ally of ours. Sometimes the enemy of our enemy is still our enemy. Mr. Speaker, I hear people sometimes say that dictatorships work in the Middle East. Sometimes they say that this introduction of freedom has somehow been terrible for people that just aren't ready for it. And I agree, the introduction of freedom to a society that's not used to it can sometimes be very messy. And it's sometimes in the course of looking back over 20 years of history where we see the success. That happened in our own founding. We went through a civil war. We went through a bloody revolution. We went through a time where we kept an entire race in chains. But Mr. Speaker, when people say that dictatorships work, no, they don't. This kid, I always wonder what's going through his mind. Probably not much, because he was stunned at the bomb that landed on his house and killed his brother. Mr. Speaker, I yield back.